You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, indeed, on this Monday afternoon. It's officially afternoon because it's 1 minute afternoon. Just to give you a heads up, I've got a great interview that I just did this morning with a guy named Valrice Cooper. He spent 35 years in prison. He has trained Roy Jones Jr. Really, really, really interesting story. That should be up later today on this very channel as a special edition of Crime, Corrections, and Culture. Please remember, like, share, subscribe the episode, and also remember the super chats and super stickers because they are very much appreciated. Persephone, do you have anything else to add before we get to the nuts and bolts of the episode here?
No, I do want to ask how your special episode went with James on Saturday.
Oh, wow. The episode with James, I thought it was fantastic. It was a great discussion. I look forward to doing more of these weekend, more philosophical episodes because it was a lot of fun. And I think it's educational and it takes us away just from the current event stuff to more, what's the word I'm looking for? Philosophical, I'm going to go with. I probably already said that, but I'll say it again because it's worth repeating. Philosophical topics.
And what's happening with the rational egoist, seeing as Mark's not here to ask?
Well, on Thursday, we've got an episode where there will be a debate between Liquid Zulu and Liam Staten. That should be fantastic. We've got a super chat from Jenna Kleem for $5. Thank you, Jenna. She says, remember Kent State. I can't. I wasn't yet born. But nevertheless. And then Friday, I'll be doing an interview with Andy Bernstein about the movie. Oh, Lord, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. He and I will be discussing that. And I may just surprise people. I'm thinking about doing a solo episode of The Rational Egoist maybe tomorrow. We'll see if the mood really strikes me.
Fabulous.
Also today, don't forget, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Everyday Ethics. And I believe we're doing today Crime, Corrections, and Culture, correct?
Yes, we are.
3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. So we got a lot going on, as always. Mark Pellegrino is conspicuous by his absence. He's in an undisclosed location. We really don't know what's happening with him. But I suppose we will figure it out at some point. No?
No, I don't think we'll ever figure it out.
All right.
He just comes and goes.
So Persephone, once again, did not read the articles that I sent. She's a slacker.
I read some of them.
Well, I don't know. Oh, by the way, did you post the articles for Saturday's episode?
No, I've been really busy. I promise the articles for Saturday and for today will be up directly after this episode.
Directamente. All right. Well, look, we've got a situation right now. It's called Project Freedom. Donald Trump is calling it. And basically what he's doing is he is trying to get stranded ships that are in the Strait of Hormuz. He is going to get them out. He's going to, not him personally, obviously, but he's going to assign the U.S. military to go escort these ships out. The Iranians are saying they better not or they're going to attack. Evidently, they've already launched attacks on the UAE on one of their ships. It's unknown whether, at least as last time I looked, whether that ship was being escorted by American military. But so that's, who knows how that's going to turn out, with the getting these ships out of there. We obviously wish them well. We want these ships to be, escorted to safety. We don't want problems for them. More disturbing to me, however, is that Trump has said that now that he, quite frankly, is just going to ignore the War Powers Act. He says it's unconstitutional. And so he doesn't have to abide by it. This was after members of his administration made the ridiculous argument that since there was a ceasefire, that stopped the clock of the 60 days. So, now we have the president who has shown no concern for the United States Constitution, now saying he's not going to show any concern for this law because it's unconstitutional. Folks, I'm curious. Let me just fix this because it's getting on my nerves behind me here. Folks that have supported the war in Iran, I really, please tell me what's the thinking now? Are you still supporting it? Do you still think it's a good idea to have the president of the United States basically just say he's disregarding the law? He does not care what the law says. Conservatives used to say, you have to uphold the law. They're very angry with the local jurisdictions when it comes to immigration. They're saying these people aren't enforcing the law. Prosecutors aren't enforcing the law. Evidently, that doesn't apply when their big orange daddy doesn't uphold the law. But I'm sorry for being a little, insulting and sarcastic toward this guy, but let's be honest. He's shredding the United States Constitution. He's shredding the rule of law, and he's being cheered on by his band of merry sycophants. And there are people who have supported this because they, correctly identified Iran as an enemy. But I'm just curious, does any of this change anybody's mind about this war, or is it still full bore ahead? Screw the Constitution, screw the law. This needs to get done. I'm really curious. Persephone, what do you think about it?
I feel like this was all so unnecessary. It was all so unnecessary. Yes, they were a threat in their own way, but by starting this war, there have just been so many consequences that apparently he didn't foresee that has created so many additional issues, and it was all so unnecessary. That's my thought. Like, I don't think anybody's going to turn around and go, actually, you know what, maybe we were wrong, because it seems recently like people are incapable of admitting when they were wrong, especially the people who were so, vocal about their support. I don't think anybody's going to turn around and say, oh, actually, maybe we were mistaken. I think you're just get a lot of people backtracking and go, actually, we never really supported it.
So here's the problem. Is when you take the stance, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it again and again and again and again. When you take the stance that the end here, a war with Iran, is worth violating the Constitution over, is worth disregarding the War Powers Resolution, I hope you grasp, and if the people that don't grasp it, I don't know how they don't, that there's going to come a time when a leader of the country is going to do the same thing, but for stuff that you don't like. And you've completely thrown out now constitutional arguments, rule of law arguments. You cannot come and say, well, this guy's violating the law. Sorry, don't care. You supported that. That was a violation of the law. That's no longer an argument. So now you end up just defending either the importance of a policy, the morality of a policy, whatever, completely divorced from the rule of law backdrop. Now, for those objectivists that Akira Felix is citing now, the vast majority of the country does not share your moral framework, right? So what we were supposed to all have in common, even those with different moral frameworks, is the rule of law, right? But now you don't have that. So when you were now going to be advocating for or against something, you're going to be relying solely on the objectivist ethics. That's the only thing you have. And I think the objectivist ethics is very important. Don't get me wrong. It's my moral framework. But the objectivist ethics also supports, in the political realm, the rule of law, which you've completely thrown out.
It's in a right world, in a sane world, that is true. But what's going to happen is they're going to say, no, but it was different here. So when you do it, we can still make legal arguments when you do it. But when we did it, it was different because there was extenuating circumstances.
And they would be laughed
They'd
at
be wrong.
by
Yeah.
any serious thinker.
No, but
Akira Felix says the Adam Mossoff objectivist types will eventually lose all credibility for only defending the Constitution when it's convenient. Yeah, I mean,
I wish that I shared your conviction that they would be laughed at, but having seen the way that people who I thought were more reasonable and more logical, seeing the way that they've conducted themselves and the arguments that they've made and the way that they've gone about things, I don't believe that they'd be laughed at. I think...
By who are you talking about doing the laughing? I'm talking about people who oppose them, not people within their camp. There's people that already scoff at objectivists, period.
I'm
Now,
talking about even within like the same circles.
Oh yeah, I don't think they're compatriots. They're the people who have been with them will laugh at them, but and laugh really isn't the. Okay, so Jim Valiant, and this was where Jim is going to lose. I don't care. This argument that is being made, Jim. Well, every president, I don't give a shit. Right? We are supposed to be the principled ones. So if that's going to be our argument, just tell me now. Jim, hold on, Persephone. Let me flow. If that's going to be our argument as classical liberals, as advocates for capitalism, as advocates for a free society, if the argument is, well, all presidents have done it, so I can support it now, let me know because I'm out. I want nothing to do with that. I love Jim Valiant. I'm telling Jim, and I will tell anybody else. I want nothing to do with the arguments that, well, everybody else has done it, so it's okay now, or everybody else has done it, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't give a shit. We either are advocates for the rule of law, for capitalism, or we're not. We don't get to discard arguments that we've made for decades because now we don't like Iran. I'm sorry. I'm done with that shit. Like, seriously, I'm fucking finished with it. I'm so fucking annoyed with that bullshit. When I read this and it tells me that we never violate principle, that principles are so important we can't afford to violate them, that doesn't comport with, well, almost every president has violated it. I'm sorry, it just does not. It does not. If you supported this war in spite of the Constitution, if you continue to support the violations of the War Powers Act, if you support a president who said he doesn't give a shit about the law, I'm out. Jim, it doesn't matter if Trump didn't invent it. Now you say you think the War Powers Act was unconstitutional, Jim, but you've told me over and over again that it's part of our system and you've got the split screen and you have to go with what's been going on. Okay, the War Powers Act is unconstitutional. So is the war. You cannot have a double standard. Stop. Everybody, please stop. Think about what you were doing and the arguments you were making. Objectivist, you are losing it. You are losing your credibility. You may not think so, and you can insult me and you can tell me whatever you want. But I'll tell you what you won't tell me is that I'm inconsistent, that I violated my principles, that I've turned my back on arguments I've made in the past, because I won't. Because my spine is made of fucking steel. So you can get online, and this isn't for Jim. You can get online and you can defend the Constitution on one hand and then call defenders of the Constitution rationalists. You can call us a bleftivist if you're in that camp. Whatever you want to justify your support for a war with Iran, I do not care. I'm done. I'm done even like catering to that shit for a second. In the past, I've said, well, people can disagree. That's done. You're either going to be consistent or you are not. No, not you, Jim. You're not. I just said you're not the one that's insulting me. I understand that, Jim. I'm speaking more generally now. I know my spine is solid, Jim. Thank you. I love you. I don't doubt that the War Powers Act is unconstitutional. But I remember, you know what, man? Fuck it. Mark Pellegrino went on with Rosie Ginsburg. Rosie Ginsburg brought on a different guy to argue with Mark about the war. That guy, I don't remember his name now, touted the War Powers Act in his defense of an unconstitutional war. So now Trump says he doesn't care about the War Powers Act. So now what's the excuse going to be? Now what is it? I say we don't need to reference the War Powers Act because the Constitution doesn't allow this. But then I'm told, but they've been violating it. It's precedent. Okay, the War Powers Act is precedent. So if the War Powers Act is precedent, but Trump throws that out, so what is it? Does precedent matter or doesn't it matter? Does the Constitution matter or doesn't it matter? You know what matters, it seems to me, is that people don't like Iran. So therefore, screw everything else. No, I'm not built that way. I'm sorry. I'm just not. And every objectivist out there can turn their back on me, tell me to go fuck myself, whatever the hell they want. I'm honest. I'm the one telling the truth here. This is an unconstitutional war, and now it's violating the law. Whether that law is constitutional or not, I don't know. You know what I was against? The immigration laws, because they're unconstitutional. But I've heard, well, they're precedent. Well, this is precedent. So which is it going to be? How are we going to handle this? What are we going to do? Yeah, I know. I'm told I treat the Constitution as a religious document. You know what's being religious? Treating the Iran war like it's a religious crusade. Like that's the religion. That it's intrinsically good regardless of anything else. We must fight Iran. The country who our own goddamn intelligence said would not have an ICBM for at least 10 years and was not pursuing a nuclear weapon. And yes, 60%. I know that's where they enriched it to. You know where they were when Trump got us out of the JCPOA? Little over 3%. But everybody that's against Iran said what a horrible deal that was. But it kept him at 3%. So was it a horrible deal? But getting out of it got him to 60%. So no matter what, I guess we needed to go to war. It doesn't matter. So can we just set a standard? Tell me, what is the standard we're going to defend? And how we can do, how this war is applicable. Because from my perspective, for a lot of folks out there, the standard is simple. I don't like Iran. Therefore, war with Iran. Everything else doesn't matter. Not to me. Now, Persephone, you may speak.
I feel for you because I think that in the coming months and the coming years, you're going to be very disappointed. Because people are not all of a sudden going to start behaving rationally.
I know, Persephone, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, a guy once went to Brent at work. They were working together, and the guy screwed up badly, and the guy went to Brent and said to Brent, he says, I'm sorry to disappoint you. And Brent told the guy, to disappoint me, I would have had had high expectations, which I didn't. I no longer have high expectations for a lot of people. Now you may flow, but let's talk about the 5 pounds we got from Phil. He says, Mike, I do wish you'd stop soft pedaling with diplomatic language and just say what you mean. Thank you, Phil. Even with the ladies present, old chap. Thank you, Phil. Persephone, you can flow. Ian Gilmore's correct. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't really have a lot to say. This whole thing has been tiring for me from the beginning, from the very first second that it happened, and everybody started supporting the war, whether openly or in a roundabout way. The people who supported the war, it has been tiring for me from the get-go, and it's not going to stop being tiring because people are not going to stop making excuses and speaking around the issue and saying whatever they need to in order to make themselves feel better about the dumb decision that they supported. And it's been tiring. And the people who did support the war for the goal that they thought the war was going to have, that goal isn't going to be achieved. This, as far as I know, this war has had no positive effects for anybody. The whole thing was freedom for the people of Iran. And, like, we need to destroy them. Unless you're going to drop a nuke on that country, this war is not going to do anything. It's not going to have any positive consequences. There is no way that without serious changes in the wrong direction, that Iran's going to stop being a threat. Like, unless you go in and actually destroy the country, it's still going to be a threat. So what are you doing other than kicking the can down the road, stomping all over the law, fucking over their people, fucking over your people, fucking over the economy? And for what? What is the outcome been? What is the benefit been of any of this? What will it be? I can't foresee any good outcomes. I couldn't from the beginning. Because from the beginning it was obvious that there was never going to be freedom. There was never going to be like a total overhaul of the regime. And that country is still going to be a threat, no matter, like, again, unless you go in and nuke them. And that will also have bad outcomes, because I don't even think that I need to list the bad outcomes that would have. So what was the point of all of this, other than, I mean, for Trump to make himself feel good, and for people who this didn't affect to make themselves feel like they were doing something good when they weren't really?
Akira Felix says, they told us that the commander-in-chief had nothing to do with the war. Yeah, right, he says. No, obviously the commander-in-chief has something to do with the war. So, yeah, do we have anything else to say on this? Because this is a topic that really sticks in my craw, gets on my nerves, really pisses me off. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, because I've been told about how, we need to do this for justice for, the Iranians is one of the things. It's an act of justice. But the people telling me that never gave a shit about the injustice that they were doing to me. So to ask me to care about, and I listen, I'm dedicated to justice, right? It's very important. But it's always justice. It's not just when it fits my pet project.
I want someone to explain to me exactly how this is justice.
Maybe we can get a little laugh here. So Diana says, you went sick like someone was chewing candy in your ear. So we lay down in bed. I'm here. Diana's here. And the candy chewing commences. I'm trying to read, and I can just hear, and I look, and she looks back. Like, what? Like, what do you think? What do you think I'm looking for? Like, Go take a walk with the candy. It doesn't need to be right here.
You can't kick her out of bed.
What are you talking about? The other thing that she does to me, she comes with the phone, again, right next to me, puts it up high. And now I'm hearing songs and this and that. But here's what you got to understand. I get up 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm quiet as a church mouse. If anything happens to wake her up, oh, get the fuck out of here. Why are you disturbing me? You see?
So here, what time was she doing this? Because if it was like after bedtime,
What difference does it make?
then I'm on your side. If it was just while you guys were chilling, I'm on Diana's side.
Of course. Yes, jelly beans. How'd you know, Akira? Jelly beans and Tootsie Roll Pops, and I'm over it. And here's the thing. What difference does it make what time it is? If I'm reading, what difference does it make if I get... I'm getting all kinds of texts now confirming podcast interviews. What difference what time it is? I'm reading. I'm doing something. For heaven's sake, if I did that to you, or I did it to her, or I do it to Akira,
Oh,
not that
see,
well, you and Akira wouldn't be in bed with me, but
I'm such a hypocrite because I'm backing Diana here, but when I'm reading and Salem puts like TikToks on and he's like listening to TikToks next to me while I'm trying to read, I'm like, can you please put that softer? It's on like the lowest volume that it can possibly be, and I'm like, you're disturbing me. So I'm backing Diana, but I would do the same thing as you. Can I tell you a story? It's a bad one. It's about what happened to me this weekend.
yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead. You do that. Tell the story. I'm going to get back to Andy Bernstein. I can listen. I can do both.
My beautiful husband is in the Twitch comments saying, careful. I love him more than anything in the world. But he does listen to TikToks in bed. So this weekend...
Well, hold on 1 second, and then you can tell it, because I want to tell you what happens. Yes, Salem, double standards. Because what I did is I got earplugs for these types of situations. So the other day, I go to put the earplugs in because the noise is happening, and what do I get? Like I'm the jerk for putting the earplugs in.
Okay, no, I mean, that's fair. If you're trying to come up with a solution.
I feel like you women just want to stick up for each other no matter how absurd it is. If you knew what I went through yesterday, I don't want to get into too much. I want to get back to the story. So tell your story, and then we're not going to talk about me being stuck at the mall and then in the car and everywhere else. So just tell your story.
So yesterday, I'm sitting at my desk, and my dog, Kiara, my pit bull, runs up to me and starts pawing at me. So I turn around and I look at her, and her face is like swollen, and her eyes are red. So I start freaking out, right? Because her face is like she looks like a squishmallow. And she's crying, and her eyes are red, and they're tearing up, and I'm like, oh no. So I go and get Salem. We've got 3 dogs. So I go and get Salem, and I'm like, you need to take this dog to the vet. So he takes her to the emergency vet. The vet says that she swallowed a bee. So she had this massive, like, swelling thing on the side of her neck. And she was all puffy, and the vet had to give her 3 shots. And I spent the whole of yesterday and most of today, like, extremely stressed about my dog who ate a bee and who is still swollen and who still has, like, a goiter, like, on her neck. And I just want everybody to know that. So don't be mad at me for not reading the articles, because I've been stressed.
What the hell did that have to do with my girlfriend making noise while I'm trying to read?
Nothing.
So you just got in and told a random story?
I just thought everybody should know and, go easy on me. So that when you are mean to me, inevitably, everybody goes...
They
Michael,
do that
how
anyway, and meanwhile, I have
do
no
that
clips. Meanwhile, where's the clips?
Bullshit. I sent you the clips on... Did I?
You did, and I posted them, but now we got a new day. Okay, we're getting some
so
spam.
I was supposed to do clips for episodes that haven't happened yet.
Yeah. Did you send me the interview that I just did so I can get working on that when we hang up here? Okay, let me get to the story now. Individualism, and I want to tell you what sparked this. I'm going to guess you pulled the Pellegrino and did not read the Jacobin article.
No. Ew.
Okay. All right. So the Jacobin article, let me back it up here because I've got so many articles because I did so much reading this morning. It's about the May Day answer to Diana says she's sorry about your dog. She swallowed a bee playing badminton once. Oh, my God. Diana, sometimes, hon, less is more. We don't need to let people know that you're swallowing bees. She also got spit at and swallowed the spit from a llama.
So you tell her less is more, and then you proceed to just throw her completely under the bus.
Yes. Okay. The article is called Mayday, an answer to rampant individualism. And it says, train unions defend us, not just workers' conditions, but the right to an existence not cramped by the pressure of the job. So you should not be cramped by the pressures of the job. Anyways, they get to talking about individualism and how they're opposed to this individualism. Here's what they talk about. In his new documentary on the manosphere, Louis Theroux shines a light on the online community that tells young men they are struggling financially because they are simply not alpha enough. Many are convinced to send what little money they have to influencers who share the supposed path to success. Then it says, equally, women can't look at their phones without being tormented by videos of trad wives. In fact, anyone looking to improve their personal well-being would do well to start by accepting that we exist as individuals, as part of a society. This is what they're saying, that we cannot solve every problem we face alone. Sometimes we face common challenges that require common solutions. They cite Andrew Tate in their example, of the people that they're going against, the rampant individualism of an Andrew Tate. And then they get into some collective bargaining crap. But so Andrew Tate is not an individualist. Trad wives are not individualists. The manosphere does not recommend individualism. So there are, what's the word I'm looking for here now? There's not one universally accepted idea of individualism. None of them, however, is represented by the manosphere or by trad wives, right? So this is from the Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy. Individualism, the view that the single person is the basic unit of political and economic analysis, with social wholes being being merely logical constructions or ways of talking about numbers of such individuals and the relations among them. The consequence for the study of social facts is that they must be approached through the actions and intentions of individuals. So that's from the Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy. I'm going to venture a guess and say that this is not the stuff that Andrew Tate talks about. Andrew Tate is not online talking about methodological individualism. All right. So how did Ayn Rand define individualism? Ayn Rand says, individualism regards man, every man, as an independent, sovereign entity who possesses an inalienable right to his own life, a right derived from his nature as a rational being. Individualism holds that a civilized society or any form of association, cooperation, or peaceful coexistence among men can be achieved only on the basis of the recognition of individual rights, and that a group as such has no rights other than the individual rights of its members. And then you have also from Ayn Rand, do not make the mistake of the ignorant who think that an individualist is a man who says, I'll do as I please at everybody else's expense.
That's the problem. That's what a lot of people think.
Well,
when they hear when they hear that, they think, well, you don't care about anybody else. You only care about yourself. You're just going to fuck people over.
Right. And okay, I also look to Ludwig von Mises for his view on individualism. Primarily through the lens of methodical individualism, a foundational doctrine of Mises's economic and social theory, holding that all actions are performed by individuals. For Mises, collectives such as nation states or classes have no independent existence. They exist only through the actions and thought of individuals. Cooperation, he advocated. He actually says cooperation over egoism, where I think that it's cooperation by means of egoism. But he says, contrary to critics who viewed individualism as selfish or antisocial, Mises viewed it as the ultimate philosophy of social cooperation. We've got also, let me look at from Friedrich Hayek. Friedrich Hayek says that, let me find a thing. Friedrich Hayek goes through the different variants of individualism, starting with John Locke, up until the present day, which for him, this would have been about the 60s, I believe. He talks about Locke, Adam Smith, the history of individualism. He goes against the rationalism of a Rousseau. He said the fundamental attribute of true individualism is one of humility toward the process by which mankind has achieved things which have not been designed or understood by any individual and are indeed greater than individual minds. What individualism teaches us is that society is greater than the individual only insofar as it is free. Again, I'm pretty sure that is not what Andrew Tate is advocating. And also, well, I'm not going to, that's another article. This basically says the same thing. So I also asked Claude for individualism and the history of it. Claude defines individualism as the moral, political, and philosophical view that the individual human being is the primary unit of value, the fundamental locus of rights, autonomy, and moral consideration. It holds that the individual's interest, judgment, and self-development take precedence over collective entities. So, and it gets into the ancient roots. It goes back to ancient Greece, as Jim just did. But the bottom line is individualism is not the idea that we are here alone, that we are atomistic, or that we can violate everybody else's rights, or that we have to be macho. It simply says that we exist as individuals. That when you say society, ultimately you're talking about a group of individuals. There's no independent existence. We respect individuals. We respect their rights. We respect their autonomy. We respect their individuality. That's individualism. It's not this caricature constructed by Jacobin in order to justify collective bargaining.
So we did a special episode of the Capitalist Corner, not this weekend, this weekend past, the weekend before, where we spoke about self-interest. And people misunderstand self-interest or selfishness the same way they misunderstand individualism. And I think it's because they're telling on themselves. They assume that rational self-interest or individualism means that you only care about yourself and you will step on other people to get what you want, not understanding that that's not what it is, that goes contrary to what rational self-interest is and what individualism is. So they're operating from a misunderstanding. They will not be told that they don't understand, because if you tell them, but that's not what it is, then they hit you with the no true Scotsman. They're like, oh, but that's what a lot of people think it is. And it's like, it doesn't matter what a lot of people think it is. That's not what it is. They want to believe that in people who are individuals, people who, are out for their own self-interest, are selfish, horrible, evil people who will just, I don't know, stab a woman in the back for no reason.
This is great here. We get from Phil, 20 pounds. Phil is my hero, I think. He says, as a dual citizen, I reasonably expect the president to have a vague understanding of his office, which he pledging about. But I'm just an old git who thinks principles are important. Otherwise, you're deceiving everybody. Yes. So, Persephone, the article goes on. It says, women can't look at their phones without being tormented by videos of trad wives. Women struggle.
Can I just stop you? Just what does that mean? Tormented.
It means that they're. I don't know. I'm not tormented by anything online.
So,
I may torment myself, but nobody's tormenting me.
I see so many videos of trad wives on my TikTok and online. I see it all the time. Do you know what I'm not? I'm not tormented.
No.
No.
But you're picking up my bad habit of interrupting.
Well, I learned from the best. It's just that one sentence, just I feel like it tells you everything that you need to know about how the rest of that article is going to be. Because to say that you're tormented by something that you can choose to ignore, and you're not forced to watch it. Fuck it. You're not forced to open TikTok. You can very easily just not look at it. So to say that you're tormented, it's appealing to emotion in the worst way. And when people start to do that, I just tune them out because I'm like, you're being dishonest right from the jump. Sorry, carry on.
Okay. Women struggling to juggle work and care responsibilities are told that their stresses will disappear by donning an apron and turning the clock back to a simpler time when women were allegedly taken care of economically by their breadwinning husband on the condition that they provided labor in the domestic sphere. Keep scrolling and you'll find someone else sitting cross-legged on the floor telling you all your problems can be resolved by breathing slowly and thinking positively. That may well have a role to play, but as a new book by sociologist Damian Karbovnik points out, that kind of positive psychology puts the responsibility on individuals as if the social or economic context has no influence. Okay. So first they caricatured and strawmanned individualism, and now they're doing it to positive psychology. So let me just say, I think there are valid criticisms of positive psychology. But let me tell you first. So positive psychology started with a guy named Martin Seligman. I've read his books on learned happiness, he calls it. Because he was doing studies, I believe in the 70s, and he discovered a phenomenon called learned helplessness. Basically that if you put dogs in crates and don't let them out, they'll eventually stop trying. And they call that learned helplessness. But what Seligman discovered was that some continued to try to get out. And what he wanted to find out is why do some animals, people, continue to strive while others quit? So he came up with the idea of learned happiness and, his movement, positive psychology. So from Google, positive psychology is the scientific study of human flourishing, focusing on strengths, positive emotions, and virtues that enable individuals and communities to thrive. Founded by Dr. Seligman as a complement to a traditional deficit-based psychology, it seeks to improve life satisfaction by fostering positive experiences, traits, and institutions. All right. Let me see over here from Harvard. Oh, I got a bunch of photos that I sent that I didn't end up sending to you that I should have. But lo and behold, I have them, so I will just read them over here. So positive psychology is not to be confused with untested self-help, footless affirmation, or secular religion, no matter how good these may make us feel. Positive psychology is neither a recycled version of the power of positive thinking nor a sequel to The Secret. Of course, no respected positive psychologist would tell you to think about, act out, and focus on only the positive in life. Balance is important. Positive psychology was not established to replace traditional psychology, but to complement it with a positive bias that's just as strong as psychology's negative bias over the last several decades. By understanding what one does, this is another message from positive psychology, and does not make us happy, we can arrive at three pillars of positive psychology: connecting with others, savoring pleasure, developing a sense of gratitude. Oh, the horror. The horror. So my main point here is in order to make their position, in order to make an argument for their position, Jacobin strawmans. It strawmans first individualism, then positive psychology. Then it gets into how we need unions to fix the problem. Unions is the answer to the rampant individualism that we have in the manosphere and in positive psychology. Go figure. Thoughts, Sephi?
Who reads that? Who reads the Jacobin and goes, yes, I agree with this. It's stupid. It's dumb. Just you can see what they're doing. If you have half a brain cell, you can read between the lines to see that they're using language in a specific way to elicit a specific emotion so that they can bypass the critical thinking part of the brain and get people all riled up, because that's what they need. That's what they need, people to be angry and to not be thinking logically. So they say, individualists like Andrew Tate, because they know that everybody hates Andrew Tate.
Yes.
And they know that people are upset with the whole trad wife movement. So instead of, they can't make a logical argument. So all they can do is play on your emotions. And it's gross. It's really gross. And it's also gross that people fall for that kind of thing.
Yes, it is. Years ago, not years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, so it is years technically, but it's not in this past. There was an article by Professor Matthew McManus in the Jacobin, strawmanning both Ayn Rand and Ludwig von Mises. And I ended up debating him on it. The episode is on The Rational Egoist if anybody wants to see how I comported myself in a debate with one of the writers from Jacobin. Not to be outdone, there was another article today in Jacobin, Persephone. It talks about the U.S. government has the power to lower drug costs, and it says basically the same bullshit. They can do it. It goes back to '89, but because it said that they can do it, I decided to look into the history of government involvement, because the thrust of the argument is this. Let me just tell you that government funds research into pharmaceutical products. They fund these pharmaceutical companies. Therefore, the taxpayer who funds them should get the benefit of cheaper drugs because they're taxed. Note that this is how it goes, right? First, they advocate the government gets involved, then the government gets involved, and then that argument turns into more government involvement. Like people who tell me, for instance, well, you benefited from the public school system, you benefit from public roads, so you have to pay back. I didn't ask for any of that shit. I come into a world that has this stuff that they previously screwed other people to do. And now they're telling me, since we screwed them, now we have to screw you too, just to make it correct. Instead of just stopping the screwing. Okay. So now, let's get into some history here. All right.
So while Michael tries to find this,
I've already found it.
So can I just say something?
No. Yes, of course.
So on the Capitalist Corner website, www.thecapitalistcorner.org, if you go to blog and you click on the Capitalism Scapegoat, there's a whole section of that blog on how government intervention basically fucked up healthcare in America, and how the government is responsible for the terrible healthcare costs. Anybody's interested?
I think Ian Gilmore is being a bit funny here.
It's a great joke. But just in case,
I thought it was great, Ian.
www.thecapitalistcorner.org.
Yes. Okay, so government funding for prescription drugs in the U.S. has evolved from minimal coverage in the 1930s to massive public financing through Medicaid 1965 and Medicare Part D 2003. It expanded via the Affordable Care Act 2010, with public funding now supporting all new pharmaceuticals developed in the last decade, primarily through federal research grants and, they public-private partnerships, research and developments, cost control. So they've been funding this stuff for quite some time. Now, by the way, first of all, in order to fund this, they've got to rob people. They've got to extort money out of people in order to fund this. Secondly, when the government gets involved in this, they crowd out private investors. Why? Because the government has a never-ending source of revenue. And then the companies ultimately have to cater to what the government wants if they want to keep getting money from, guess who? The government. Okay, so I also asked about regulations. When did the government start regulating? I hate when that happens. Okay, no. See, this is what I don't like about this, Claude. Because what it does is it screws me. Okay, the concise chronological history. Up until the 20th century, there were few federal laws regulating the contents and sales of domestically produced pharmaceuticals. A patchwork of state laws provided varying degrees of protection against unethical sales practices. Federal controls over the drug supply began with inspection of imported drugs in 1848. From there, Pure Food and Drug Act, 1906, Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, 1938, Durham-Humphrey Amendment, 1951, Kefauver-Harris Amendments, 1962, Orphan Drug Act, not Drug Addict, 1983, Hatch-Waxman Act, 1984, Prescription Drug User Fee Act, 1992, FDA Modernization Act, 1977, more in 2007, and then it gets into the recent decades. So a lot of regulation, a lot of impediments they put up impediments, then they fund you. So you're regulated, so you can't do the kind of research that would be good. Then then they start funding you to direct your research where they want it. Then they want to put price controls on you because of all the help they've done. And I'm not saying the pharmaceutical companies are by any stretch of the imagination innocent in this. You know what I mean? So there's that. So Donald Trump now, more text about podcast interviews. Okay. As of May 2026, President Donald Trump has pursued an aggressive drug pricing strategy in his second term, centered on a most favored nation approach, aiming to align U.S. drug prices with the lowest paid by other developed nations. This strategy relies heavily on executive orders and voluntary deals with pharmaceutical companies rather than the Medicare negotiation framework. Yada blah. Okay. First of all, these aren't voluntary deals when companies understand that the long arm of the government is out to get them if they don't make the deals. Right? So neither party is interested in actual freedom. That's my main point here. If the government can truly lower costs of medications, it would have been done a long time ago because they've been funding the pharmaceutical industry. They've been regulating it. They've been price controlling it. They've done whatever they can, and it doesn't work because the government ultimately can't do what people think the government can do. So that's all I have to say about that. Persephone, if you have something to add before I give the capitalist thought of the day, that'd be fine.
For the government to change the prices, they would have to unfuck 70 or 80 years worth of things. And it's like with most things, the government can't come in and wave a magic wand. No one can come in and wave a magic wand. In order to get to a good place, there has to be time spent untangling the twisted web of regulations and interference and intervention. It would be a years long process. It wouldn't be, well, we're cutting drug prices and everything's going to be fine. S- That's all I have to
Persephone,
say.
you have been wonderful today. I like to, well, I should, no, I'll do the capitalist. Why don't you go to the capitalist corner, the show from the other day, from Friday, and get up the questions. I'll give the capitalist thought of the day, and then I'll ask the question of the day. Capitalist thought of the day: the importance of principles. Individual rights are principles. Ethical actions, or rather, ethical ideas are principles. We as humans need to survive by means of principles, because thinking in terms of principles are what allow us to project into the future, and our lives, if we hit the average lifespan, go, 75, 80 years old. So when advocating for capitalism, we need to do so in principle. We need to advocate the types of structures that allow capitalism to thrive. These include a respect for individual rights, individual freedom, and it's the role of the government to protect these. It also means the rule of law, not of men, and we have that in this country embodied in the Constitution. An unperfect document, yes, of course, but then the thing to do is to fix those parts of it that we find to be imperfect, or at least advocate to fix those, not to stamp on the thing, throw it in the trash, and advocate for whatever we happen to want in the moment. If we think we're going to advance and advocate capitalism based on range of the moment preferences, we are sadly mistaken. Capitalism, yes. Principles, yes. Expediency of the moment, no. All right, Persephone, go ahead.
So the question on Friday was, which is more interesting, biology or physics? So Jenna Kleem says biology, Akira Felix says physics, Robert Nacier says biology is more interesting, though it's frankly harder, and that's why so many people run to physics. Well, that and the fact that physics has a few really absurd ideas and conclusions which make fans think they've got an edge on people who think in ordinary, logical, Newtonian ways. Zardowski's, I don't know, says, I was more interested in physics than biology.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. What's your beef?
What was your answer, physics or biology?
I couldn't care less. I'm not honestly, like, it may surprise you, but I don't find, it's not that I don't find science interesting. It just has not, when I'm, trying to alter my character and stuff, philosophy, psychology were far more important. And I was very interested in, social sciences, like, economics. I've not that I've never read anything in physics or biology, but if I were to pick one, I don't think I could, because I do like physics because it's the structure of everything, the structure of the universe, but biology is the structure of me. So, I find that pretty important also. So my question for the audience today, please go to YouTube and answer the question. It helps so much with the, what's it called? Algorithm. Persephone is going to be kind enough to go there and type this out, as she's going to do she's going to post the articles from Saturday, post the articles for today, because Persephone is just so damn wonderful. So my question for the audience is, if you were to advise Persephone, would you tell her to keep the cat ear headphones or ditch the cat ear headphones? Keep or ditch? That's the question when it comes to the cat ear headphones. Please go and check them out. Please go and answer the question. Also, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time today, everyday ethics with Persephone, and I will be doing that. And then at 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time today, Crime, Corrections, and Culture. And please check out the great interview that I have coming out later today with Val Reese Cooper. This guy went from 35 years in prison to training Roy Jones Jr. Phenomenal interview. Thank you, everybody, for your super chats, for your super stickers, for your comments and your questions. See you later. Remember to always check your premises. Peace.